Welcome to the Craft of Coaching podcast, where we dive into what it truly takes to become a skilled, confident life coach. I'm your host, Kate, head of the CLCC, or Certified Life Coach Collective, an ICF-Accredited Level 1 coach training program. We combine courage, coaching, and community to offer you more than just a training program, but a life-changing experience where you use your own personal transformation as the learning ground for supporting your clients. On this podcast, we explore how you can use coaching skills to support your clients or expand your own growth, all grounded in evidence-based coaching practices. Learn more about our program and get free resources for becoming a life coach at teamclcc.com. And now, here's today's episode. Today's episode is going to be a little different than usual because I'm going to take you behind the scenes of a massive rebrand that I've been in the midst of for several months now. And in particular, get ready for this. If you have ever struggled with branding, I'm going to normalize the struggle for you. I'm going to share a couple things that might be a little embarrassing to share. As I've been thinking about how to make announcements about our rebrand, I've been trying to determine how to structure the timeline, how to talk about what's been going on behind the scenes, what's the best way to roll it out. Turns out I did all that and I had a series of best practices that I followed, and then I needed to rebrand again. So that's what you're going to hear today, is the story of how hard it can be to rebrand and how normal it is to really get several steps into a rebrand and then go, wait. And then what do you do? So I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to share the behind the scenes as the rebrand is happening. I have supported many coaches over the years in strategic business and marketing sessions to help them rebrand. And so I know that it's never perfect, neat, logical, orderly to rebrand. And normalizing that to me is a service that I can give. You think you're going to go in one direction, then you realize you got to go in another. Like I said, some of these stories are almost a little embarrassing. I think I've come to a place of acceptance with them, though. So first, I'll share with you about CLCC and where it's going, but really what's never going to change. The CLCC program for coaches in training is still keeping what makes the program amazing at its core. We are still all about community. We are still all about combining coach training with your personal growth and development, which means personal attention, feedback on your coaching skill set, an experiential approach to learning. If you were in or are in a coach training program where you are looking at PowerPoints, red flag, because where's that PowerPoint going to be when you're in the middle of a coaching session and your client says, you're saying all these helpful things to me, but I still don't know what to do and I'm feeling frustrated. All the techniques in the world are not going to make up for anything if all you've been doing is watching some PowerPoints. We are still level 1 ICF-Accredited. And our program name is actually going to stay as the acronym CLCC. However, instead of CLCC standing for the Courageous Living Coach Certification, we're changing the acronym. We're changing it to Certified Life Coach Collective. So moving forward, whenever we say that we are the CLCC program, we're going to mean that we are the Certified Life Coach Collective. We also are leaning even deeper into the things that make us great. Courage, coaching, community. If there was like a little, Venn diagram of the overlapping circles, it would be those 3 circles: courage, coaching, and community. We are not just a coach training program. So you don't join us because you're like, I'll get a great skill set. That's it. You join us because you want something that is going to combine learning the coaching skill set with your own personal growth and development. We always say we are a life-changing program for you to become a life-changing coach. And the first life that you change will be your own. And that's because we are experiential. The more self-awareness you have, the more personal mastery and courage that you cultivate in your own life, the more equipped you will be to offer that to your clients. The more you have connection, the more you have community, the more you will thrive as a coach. It's not just about becoming the best coach that you can be. It's also about how do we support you around really living a great life, and however your coaching goes into the world, how do you have community around that? Now, there was a moment with this rebrand where I was absolutely going in a different direction. I think a parallel direction, but different direction. And the thinking really was, how great would it be if we could bring more coaching skills to the corporate world? So many people struggle operating within corporate. And I've had the opportunity over the past few years to consult in different capacities within corporate and offer manager training or conflict resolution, or to advise on performance and compensation. And as requests for that type of work would come in, I was doing a lot of it, but I also started to think about what would it look like to make our work, our CLCC work, but also something else. I felt like it needed to be bigger, about not just coaching for individual people to become coaches, but to do organizational work that leverages coaching as a skill and makes corporate more bearable. So down that pathway we went. I started to formalize the training and coaching processes that I would be using for organizational development that I had used in the past and had never really formalized. And I began thinking about a new name, and I was going, okay, what do we do with all these pieces? I knew that CLCC as its own coach training program still needed to be its own coach training program, that the organizational development offerings would be different, but side by side. At the same time, I didn't want to start a totally new business for organizational development. I wanted to connect the two. So I actually went down the pathway of developing a new name and new brand under which CLCC would operate. And some of you who are listening to this right now might be going, I feel a little crazy, because I swear Kate already announced this. She already told us all this. What is she talking about now? I'm literally saying that I sent out the announcements. You're not crazy. I sent out the announcements to thousands of people. I went onto social media, all the platforms. All these announcements were made. So this was like a fully launched rebrand out into the world. I'm feeling a little bit like HBO right now. And that might seem like the most random thing to say, but those of you who know that HBO was just HBO, and then they became HBO Max, and then they became Max, and then now apparently they're rebranding, I think, back to HBO Max. So sometimes you rebrand, even if you're a multi-million-dollar organization, and realize, oh, what we had before actually worked better. So nonetheless, how did I realize after getting down the road so far that I needed to take some steps backwards, in fact? Well, there was a day when I was actually working on the application to get our organizational training formalized as continuing education units with the ICF, or International Coaching Federation. The ICF offers different levels of training. They offer training to become a coach, which is like a level 1 training, which is CLCC, but then they offer CEUs or CEs, continuing education units, for additional and advanced training. And that's what I wanted the organizational development work to do. So I was sitting down working on this application, and for some reason I was struggling to really write a basic description of what this new branded Center for Organizational Development would be doing. Now, I had already written these descriptions before. It's not like the day I was sitting down for an application I was writing this. I had done all the branding work. But if you have ever been through what I'm about to describe, you probably already see where this is going. All the work to write the things and develop the brand when it was a few weeks or months removed from when the idea was originally conceived, or the brand or the vision was originally worked on. I had that experience of looking at what I had created and going, this doesn't work. And here's the thing. If you've ever been with a client working on a personal growth issue, it is the same thing. When somebody realizes the truth, it is very inconvenient. because I was sitting there and I was going, this doesn't work. Now, I'll talk a little bit about why I was feeling like it didn't work and why this was very, very big. The big reason that it didn't work was that I was thinking about how often corporate entities would hire consultants like myself to come in and talk about work-life balance or improving team morale or helping managers succeed. But then those same corporate entities turn around and do things that do not ensure success. Startups, I think, can be different. I'm talking about that a little differently. I kind of put startups into a different bucket. But full-on corporate life, like the calcified corporate organizations, I just kept thinking back to organizations I'd worked with and people I'd kept in touch with, and all the times I've done executive coaching and all the times that I've supported managers and executives in a coaching capacity. And I just went, man, I am so tired of this thing where organizations hire people like me to come in and support them in training their managers with coaching skills. And then maybe the people in the C-suite won't use those very coaching skills and they alienate their managers. The people in the C-suite who did the hiring are the ones who won't get on board. Or, wow, I'm really tired of trying to support corporate with work-life balance as a message that I'm brought in to deliver for a lunch and learn. And then that same corporate entity turns around and piles more work on people's shoulders. Or at performance review time does this BS thing of refusing to give a 5 rating to an employee who is a star employee because, as they say, you should always have something to strive for, which those types of actions on behalf of leadership only reinforce burnout. And here I am being hired to come in and do a lunch and learn or like an afternoon workshop on work-life balance. And the people at the top get to pat themselves on the back and feel really good about the fact that they brought me in and they're quote unquote doing something for the company while turning around and not doing things that are going to be good for the company. I'm really tired of seeing good people asking how they can be better leaders and working late hours and trying to put a positive spin for their team on a poor decision that came down from leadership. And then seeing how the corporate shareholders at the top don't really care how good their employees are or how much those employees are trying to make the company succeed. They will lay off those great employees in a heartbeat if it means saving a little money. And I just went, I was just having this little mini crisis sitting here trying to write a basic description of what I wanted this organizational development work to achieve and to do, and going, corporate is so broken. I mean, I've just named a bunch of things about it that are broken, but to me, frankly, the most broken thing that I see is that so many people like you, who for years have known that the corporate world doesn't really feel good, but yet they're willing to say, look, okay, all right, it's not lighting me up, but it's a paycheck. I can count on that. But in recent years, the number of corporate layoffs, even when the company was profitable, is ridiculous. Microsoft is a perfect example, and I love to hate on Microsoft because their software is crap. It is the most ridiculous, poor performing software imaginable. So Microsoft, May 2025, they laid off 6,000 people, even though MSNBC is reporting that, in fact, in the previous quarters, Microsoft made better than expected profits. So 6,000 some odd people, without a doubt, were part of making Microsoft a more successful company. And I guarantee you there's a good number of those people who were walking into work every day going, okay, all right, it's not lighting me up, but it's a paycheck I can count on. And then they couldn't. And even though those decisions are not impacting me directly, you can hear the fire in my voice when I'm talking about it. I'm soapboxing, obviously. I'm going to get to the point here. But essentially, I'm just going, I don't want to be part of these corporations being able to pat themselves on the back as if they're doing something when they're not. Now, if you are in the C team at a corporate organization and you go, we are not that kind of corporation, all right, great, reach out, call me up, because that is actually who I would like to work with. But I'm not talking about all corporate jobs. There are absolutely some great companies out there. It's just that there are not a lot that are really interested at a cultural level in making work more humane and protecting the livelihoods of employees who serve the organization over making the shareholders more money. That, even though the shareholders already have a ton of money and more money, frankly, at some of these organizations than these individuals could ever spend in a lifetime. And I get why some may say, well, but isn't it important for people who have a different vision for corporate to come in and try to fix such a broken system? And I sat with that for a while. And where I went with that was that really I care far less about trying to fix corporate, especially because I don't want my name any longer attached to corporate organizations who are going to bring me in to, like I said, make themselves feel better about quote unquote doing something for their employees when they're not really. I care far more about supporting the people, the individuals who are trying to navigate corporate. Then that sent me down a rabbit hole of going, who have we really had showing up to CLCC? And then I kind of went, oh my gosh, of course, Kate. Why was I trying to go in this organizational development direction when at CLCC we've always had that creative rebel soul seeker type in our training program? And they might not look the way you think a creative rebel would look. They might have pink hair and tattoos, but they work in corporate. They're like getting it done, and they're just trying to survive it. It's an environment that's not really built for them at the soul level. It doesn't matter what they look like. That's not what I'm talking about when I say a creative rebel soul seeker type. And I went, if we continue to rebrand in the direction of more organizational development, then I'm only going to have less energy for speaking to and working with the people I really want to support through CLCC, which are the people who have always felt somewhat out of place in those types of corporate environments and they'd like something different. So again, all of this realization came after I had already gone out and announced the move into more organizational development work to everyone. I mean, I put time and effort into re-recording intros to the Craft of Coaching podcast with our new name, putting it onto graphics and assets, talking about it with friends and mentors and advisors and the team, all of that public declaration, and then realizing, no, actually, I cannot ignore the ugh in my soul. And that noise I just made is its own whole vibe. Now, again, I want so much for this podcast episode to be one where I normalize the back and forth, the 2 steps forward, 1 step back, the I thought I had it, but maybe I didn't, second guessing of branding. And one thing that I want to say about that is that if you are building your very, very, very first brand, I do think it is important to just pick something and go with it, rather than try to get it perfect. If there is anything that someone struggling with branding should take away from today, it's that I do not think, I am not telling a story today of, hey, avoid the struggle I went through, get all your ducks in a row before you announce your brand. No, I'm literally saying to you, I don't think I could have arrived where I did eventually arrive with the rebranding process without having done this 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I think especially if you're building your first brand, you have to build it. You have to stop obsessing and trying to get it perfect. You have to just build it and then trust that you can rebrand later if you need to. Okay? I talk about this in the Coaching Blueprint, which is my digital marketing program for coaches. coachingblueprintprogram.com is where you can find it. But definitely do not think that I'm saying to you, hey guys, make sure you're really clear about your branding before you announce it. No, I'm saying it's all survivable here. You can build a brand, announce it to the world, and then realize that you actually want to redo it. Now, before you actually get to a point where you're going to be comfortable with redoing, you'll probably fret. You know what I'm talking about. When I was in this space of going, what am I doing with the brand? I talked to my husband, my friends, my coach. I was trying to do the perfectionism thing. I was trying to get all my ducks in a row. What was I supposed to say I did? How did I define it? What was it I really wanted? What did I need to let go of? Would people be confused? How do I talk about what I do now? And hopefully you're noticing, if you're already a coach, considering becoming one, that these are profound coaching questions. Whether I'm talking about building a business, or I'm talking about a career change, or I'm talking about, do I stay married or not, or do I want to have a kid or not? Whatever your client is bringing to you, they're going to be saying things like, how do I talk about my life now? How do I define what happens next? What is it I really want? What do I need to let go of? What are other people going to think? These are all things that come up when people are involved in a process of change. So you might even be wondering about, how do I talk about what I do if I become a coach and I still have a full-time job, but I also have a coaching side hustle? You might be asking yourself, is that what I really want? Is it too much? These are things that are really normal to go through. All right, so now that I've normalized that back and forth so much, I'll share a little bit more, because CLCC as an acronym, the name change, that's a pretty big shift, going from Courageous Living Coach Certification to Certified Life Coach Collective. Same acronym, CLCC, but now Certified Life Coach Collective. Why was that? Well, one thing, it was kind of interesting. This is something that you don't always anticipate when you're building a brand. So I build the Courageous Living Coach Certification brand, but more and more often, I was getting questions from potential coaches in training about what courageous living meant. Apparently, unbeknownst to me at the time that I'm, coming up with these names and things, there are a number of religious organizations out there that are using the term courageous living as part of instruction in religious virtues. So sometimes potential program participants were wondering if the CLCC program was religious in nature. And to be clear, our program is not religious in nature and never has been. And also, to be clear, no shade at all to any particular religion. That's just not what CLCC has ever been about. But I realized it was actually causing some market confusion. Who knew? Who knew? Like I said, you are not going to know everything when you're building your brand. You might build out a brand and then realize, oh, certain people take it this way, and I had intended it another way. So with updating the name, I also felt somewhat stuck around how to do that without basically having to start over in terms of CLCC's online presence. I was thinking about, what about SEO? What about all these years of backlinks or content, or the bajillion times in a podcast or somewhere else that I had stated CLCC over and over? I mean, just in this Craft of Coaching podcast alone, I'm sure I've said the acronym CLCC thousands of times across all these episodes. And then there are the places where I've been a guest on a podcast and been interviewed. CLCC is mentioned in my books, The Courage Habit, The Gift of Coaching, 100% Fully Alive. So I started playing around with what other acronyms might be possible. And I finally landed on one that not only matched CLCC, but thankfully some IP rights research through my attorney revealed no one had made a claim on the name, Certified Life Coach Collective. So that's the new acronym for CLCC. Instead of Courageous Living Coach Certification, we're now the Certified Life Coach Collective. Another item that had been on my agenda for a while with the rebrand was changing our URL. For the longest time, the URL teamclcc.com had been our, place on the web. But I always felt like from a search engine optimization or SEO standpoint, it's not the best URL. Like a great URL tells someone what they're likely to find at that URL. So, if you're lucky enough to own the URL, lifecoachtraining.com or, something like that, that's, a better URL from an SEO perspective. So changing the URL was one of those things I always kind of meant to do. Then our program had bigger priorities. It would get moved to the back burner. I'd let it go. I also kind of wanted to change it because sometimes people mishear it. And I had gotten kind of tired of spelling it out. It's easily heard as teen, T-E-E-N, like a teenager, instead of team, T-E-A-M, like teamwork. So there I was. I wanted to change the CLCC acronym. I had already figured out that CLCC will stand for Certified Life Coach Collective, and I wanted to change the URL, but I didn't want a really long URL. That was the other thing. So I snagged certifiedlifecoachcollective.com, And if you look at that, it's going to point to Team CLCC. But that just was, there was a whole 24, 48 hours where it's like, okay, yeah, that's what we're going to do. And then I went, no, because after buying the URLs and trying to make a decision about which URL and all of that, I realized I really didn't want a long URL. Then I start talking to different people and I ask them what they think. And everybody's like, oh, I think teamclcc.com is really catchy. This, by the way, would be the moment when, hey, it's a really good idea to, survey some people about things like this before you undertake an entire URL change. And then I found that when I was really thinking about all the graphics, all the text, all the podcast episodes, so many of them, I went, you know what? People know us at teamclcc.com. We're going to be okay. So we're keeping that URL. So I started today's podcast episode talking about the challenges of rebranding. I wanted to normalize all the ways you might feel like part of you thinks it's best to go in one direction, then you want to go in a different direction. I want to make sure you know you're not alone with that that's part of the process. I also wanted to share with you that to me, everything I'm describing today is how building a business is an inherently creative act. When you're creating a book or a canvas or something, sometimes you actually have to write the chapter of the book or paint the canvas or create the thing in order to realize what does and doesn't work. In my case, I literally came up with a new name, started re-recording all the podcasts and pointing the URL in a new direction, changing all the graphics. And it was months later that I realized, nope, this isn't it. This isn't it. And since I've started to talk about this, I can't tell you how many of my entrepreneur friends have told me that they actually have had the same experience. Sometimes they've had it with rebranding just a course and not their whole business. Sometimes they've had it in the perspective of going down a particular direction, not necessarily to rebrand, but to expand what they offer, and then realizing I don't want to offer that. But I just really want you to know how normal it is. I also want to make sure that I clarify today, since I'm talking about the CLCC brand, branding isn't just what something looks like. It's not just the logo. It's the values and messaging as well that are attributed to that brand. And in the past, I had always felt like there were so many coach training websites out there that were buttoned up and tight-laced and so serious. And CLCC's branding has always been a little different, hot pink all over the place, not seeing that in a lot of other places. Visually a little tongue-in-cheek, like graphics that our team put out one year said things like, we're about courage, coaching, and community. Mean girls need not apply. And that's still true. And I felt like I wanted to mix things up a bit. And the biggest lesson that came from this entire experience of almost going in a different direction and then coming back home was the lesson of leaning more into what made us great. So we're leaning more on the copy on the website into how we're different and what we're really about, that we are not about trying to help people fit in better in environments that weren't really designed for them. The website has also gotten a facelift. We're doing the hot pink still. We're also adding in a couple of other bright colors. So hopefully it's clearer from all of this that CLCC is still the program that you've known and loved. The acronym now stands for something different, but that I'm leaning into, we as an organization are leaning into, what does it take to really bring about more courage, more collective change, more leaning into the real of the way things are. Not like, I mean, it's just shocking to me that I even spent so much time going down this whole org development as a broader offering track. And again, if the right business approaches me and says, we'd like some org development work, or I get a referral, great. But this is really about going, who are we really here for? And where I arrived with that is, we're here for the ones who've been faking it. I'm not here for corporate fakery. I'm here for the ones who have been faking it by smiling through the meetings and nodding at the bullshit and wondering why they don't feel like themselves. we as an organization are here for the ones who've been surviving systems that never made space for who they really are. And really, coaching isn't just a career move, it's a rebellion because it's a way to reclaim your voice and your values and your future, to step outside of this corporate cookie cutter thing. And whether you turn coaching into a side hustle or a business or a braver way of showing up in your life, our programs are really about how you stop abandoning yourself and start building something true. So, who knows what is to come? I've done exercises over the years where I've tried to project 5 or 10 years into the future to see what the business will be. And I find that while I always end up somewhere great, it's never what I thought it would be. And in fact, it's always been that I ended up somewhere better than I could have imagined. So my hope is that you're taking away from today a lot of freedom and permission to open up that future, to not have it all plotted out, and to trust that you will end up in a better place. You will find what's really true as long as you listen to that voice inside that goes, hey, it's an inconvenient truth, but all this rebranding we've been doing, it's not working. And trust that if that voice is coming up, it's because there's something better that you were meant to move into. I think that's probably true about rebranding and probably true about life. That when the inconvenient truths of our lives arise, there's actually something more that the universe is trying to pull us into. So I share the behind the scenes of a rebrand today for you, knowing that for you and your coaching business, the detours and pivots and changes, they'll all be okay. They're all part of your growth and transformation. All right, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Before you go, would you help us out and take a moment to give us a rating in iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you're listening? It really helps us get the word out to other listeners. And before you go today, would you like free resources to support your coaching journey? Whether you're considering becoming a coach or you want advanced coach skills training, access our coaching resource library at teamclcc.com. Again, that's teamclcc.com. Can't wait to connect with you. And again, thanks for listening.